So you know the channel Geography now, right? If you don't, then you probably aren't the best at geography, but it's a pretty great channel that covers country alphabetically. Watch one of their videos and you know what I'm talking about. So every country takes like a month to make, which is pretty long, and they're only at like Syria by now, after 7 years, so it's gonna be quite a while when they come to Yemen, because it's like the third to last country alphabetically. So there's a little bit of a meme going on in this channel saying things like, when you get to the Yemen episodes, probably not gonna exist anymore. Now that's an obvious exaggeration, but it's kinda true. Yemen is not a stable country, and you'll find out why after this video. Now of course I don't want any of this bad stuff to happen, and these are just predictions, and I don't mean to offend anyone, and we'll just look at statistics, because of course no one wants a country to be Thanos-napped out of reality. Okay, cool, now let's get into the actual video. I've been sidetracked for too long. First, let's look at a geographic perspective of the country. I don't think I need to explain much. Just look at the Google Earth image and you can see how much of the country is covered in desert. Yemen is a primarily desert-covered and mountainous country, and has generally higher terrain than other countries in the region, and has a lower temperature, hence the elevation, and it makes the country drier than my humor. Yeah, me. For that matter, the country receives low rainfall annually, and they are one of the only countries who don't have a permanent body of water flowing through them, so you have to depend on groundwater as their main source. Still, they're the 20th most water-deprived country in the world, and people dying of thirst in Yemen isn't very uncommon. Another thing contributed by the lack of bodies of water in the country is the lack of farmland and food in the country. It's one of the most non-arable countries, only having 2.91% of their land as arable, and that means less food. When people don't have anything to eat, when people starve, then unsurprisingly they die. They are among the top 5 least healthiest countries on earth, which astonishingly comes from the lack of food and water. Now let's talk about the Yemeni economy. It's the 112th economy in the world, which is pretty low, and its GDP per capita is even more atrocious. It's only $825, which is 18 times lower than that of its neighbor Oman, and Oman already has the lowest GDP per capita among the Arabian Peninsula, excluding Yemen, of course, so Yemen isn't really in for a good time. In the Persian Gulf War of 1990, Yemen made the mistake of supporting Iraq, and you know what happens when you support Iraq in 1990? Basically all of the world will hate you, and hate be received. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait stopped supporting Yemen's already corrupted economy, and still to this day. But in 1994, it had a civil war fought between North Yemen, which is the Yemen today, and a socialist South Yemen. And you know what civil wars are good at? Draining the country's money. And they lost more money. Now let's talk about Yemen's geography again. Out of all the bad things that I mentioned before, there's a good thing that God gave to Yemen. It's one of the countries who control the Bab el-Mandab Strait, which 3.3 million oil barrels go through every day, significantly boosting Yemen's economy. It still stands at the number 112th economy though. And with the opening of the Suez Canal in 1896, the strait became even more important, and you might ask why. Let's say the strait isn't a strait, instead it's an isthmus. Now for instance, Italy wants to export its stuff to China. Now it would go through the canal then. What? Go back? Well, that's the thing. The Bab el-Mandab Strait is so important to the Suez Canal. Without it, the canal would be pretty much useless. That made it so much more important. But this comes at a downside. If someone blockades the strait, as its narrowest point is only about 30 kilometers, Yemen's economy would be devastated. In fact, it was blocked once during the Yom Kippur War of 1973 to block Iranian oil tankers from Israel. And one more thing, Yemen has oil, it has an abundance, in fact. However, the West are more inclined to trade with Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Oman since 1. They're not corrupt like Yemen, 2. They have a lot more oil, so trading with Yemen isn't their best option. Right, it's time to address the elephant in the room, politics. Now, do I need to explain anything? The Fragile States Index ranks it as the most politically corrupt country in the world with a score of 111.7 over 120. It's the third most authoritarian country. A lot of this instability comes from the Yemeni crisis since 2011. Basically, this guy, Ali Abdullah Saleh, led Yemen as the president for 33 years, and I guess people weren't too fond of the guy ruling them for a third of a century, so we wrote from 2011 to 2012, and this guy was like, okay, chill, and stepped down in 2012. And when his former vice president, Abdrabber Mansur Hadi, became the new president and had not a good time fending off terrorist groups and the Houthi rebellion, who turned the country upside down following a civil war in 2014, which now is still going on, but less intense. Now, if you find yourself a president of a Middle East corrupted, weak, poor, and starving, and going through a full-on internal crisis, you might need to try a method people has tested and experimented throughout the years. Flee the country. So in 2015, as the Houthi forces swept the capital of Aden, the president fled to Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabian government got mad at the Houthi insurgency, so they bomb-struck Yemen, which understandably made the Yemeni people's situation worse. Then, Saudi Arabia and a bunch of other Arab countries formed a coalition to oppose the Houthis to help Yemen, and they found to this day it's still going. Now, what I have mentioned is pretty bad, but fret not, there's actually a good thing going on in Yemen. Literacy rates had jumped 10% over the past 20 years, and from 60% to 70%. Woo! I mean, when you're starving and dying, going through a crisis, at least you're not ignorant. Other than this, terrorism and stuff also made the country more vulnerable, and foreign investments had dropped since the US, UK, and UN wasn't happy about Yemen permitting public executions, and it's the third least visited countries in the world, with about 500 annually. Now, for the controversy rating. It would probably land at a 5. Not many articles talk about it. I mean, there's still a lot, but more articles talking about dream cheating in Minecraft than the Yemeni civil war is enough to show what I mean. So the question is, will Yemen be able to recover from its crisis? It's gonna be quite difficult, but every war will eventually come to an end. Will it become a superpower like China or Russia? Probably not, but you Yemenis watching the video could prove me wrong. Probably aren't gonna be anyone since Yemen has the 4th worst internet in the world. Now keep in mind, this is my first ever video. It's not gonna be perfect. I guarantee there will be someone in the comments getting angry because I got something wrong. So sorry in advance. If you like these kind of videos, then tell me in the comments. I'll do more of them. Just tell me whatever you want me to do and I'll do it. And finally, goodbye.